Hello, hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Flo. I'm super excited to be with you guys on another Monday, especially to continue our series on fatigue. If you've been with us throughout the month of March, we've been really diving into this number one symptom that I personally see in private practice, but I know even from a broad scale spectrum, a lot of healthcare sees the number one symptom as fatigue that people tend to either make an appointment for or really seek more of a secondary opinion from a healthcare standpoint on excessive fatigue. So it's not something that, like I said, is uncommon, but I think our more conventional approach to fatigue sometimes really misses the mark, especially if you feel like you have lived this experience firsthand. You can probably relate to what I'm talking about when you think you're struggling with exhaustion, fatigue, you're crashing every day at 3 p.m. You feel like you're just running on coffee and just hoping for some answers or some relief. And maybe you go to your doctor, they run some basic labs, they kind of check off some of the major components of fatigue, right? A thyroid panel, but even then when they run a thyroid panel, maybe they just run your TSH, or they run a TSH and maybe a free T4, which to me is an incomplete thyroid panel. It does not even rule out or rule in that the thyroid may or may not be part of the fatigue picture. Or maybe they run, your foundational kind of iron panel, and you feel like they glance at the number and send you home with a pat on the back and just some general advice of get more sleep, manage your stress. Here's an antidepressant or a stimulant medication to help with the brain fog, or here's some iron and here's some B12, and here you go, champ, right? And deep down, it's like we know that something's not right. It's like you wake up feeling like you've never slept. You push through the day just fueled by caffeine and a prayer, only to crash every day at 3 o'clock. Your brain feels foggy, your body feels like it's just dragging, and just no amount of just take it easy it's not really helping anything, right? So I've seen this pattern over and over again, especially, I'm not saying that my males aren't also guilty of this, but specifically in my women or my females and males that are more your high achievers or your exhausted caregivers and entrepreneurs, right? And running on pure fumes, thinking it's just normal to feel this way as a mom or as a parent or as a full-time working professional. It's but I'm here to tell you that this is not normal. Even though this is common, it's not normal. It's you don't need more willpower. You certainly don't need more caffeine. You just need to understand what is actually contributing to the fatigue and how do we really change that to create some lasting and sustainable energy coming from the inside out is really what we're looking for here. So fatigue's not just a random symptom. Let's understand it is a signal, which is why with my low down methods, we really don't just chase symptoms or wait for full-blown disease to show up on labs. We really want to start to think deeper, right? Why are you feeling fatigued? Because that's probably just another symptom to add to the pile of what your body's trying to communicate to us on a daily basis, right? So we're thinking about what are those root causes of fatigue? What about things like blood sugar instability? What about mitochondrial function? What about mineral status? What about things like overall toxin bucket burden? What about gut dysbiosis? These are the things that are really leaving people fatigued, and no amount of here's an iron supplement, here's a B12, maybe get some more sleep, it's not helping. That's not getting to the root cause, and your body is just going to continue to feel dragged down, and you just need more and more to keep going, right? So, which brings us to today's episode, because if you're sick of this feeling, you're sick of being that person that's just running on fumes, it's time to stop masking the problem here, and let's start fueling our body first for some real lasting energy. So today, I really want to dive into more of a functional nutrition approach to fatigue, because food is not just fuel, it is our energy medicine, okay? So, of course, there's going to be deeper things that we can dive into too, but we have to start from a food-forward foundation. If you were with us last week, we talked about how often I see people, especially females, that come in, they're oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted, I'm so fatigued, and doing even just a general dietary analysis, they're I had coffee for breakfast and salad and a celery juice for lunch. I'm yeah, I would be fatigued too. There's no energy to run the tank. that makes sense, right? So today I really want to unpack how our blood sugar relates to fatigue, and also how our blood sugar is dictated by when we eat, what we eat, how we pair foods together, because having this constant roller coaster of highs and lows, that's going to leave you exhausted. And how do we really think about eating for sustainable and stable energy? Number two, I really want to dive into energy giving and energy draining foods. And drive home the point that coffee is not a breakfast option, celery juice is not a meal, and skipping meals probably is sabotaging our energy throughout the day, right? So we want to think about really food from a biological perspective. How does food provide energy based off of how food is even grown, right? It's like, oh, so food gets energy from the earth and it gets energy from the sun. It absorbs those photons of energy. And then as humans, we get to partake when we eat those foods. It's like, yes, it's magic how nature and the human body really connect together when we understand how to fuel our body in a blood sugar balancing way, and also using more of our energy giving foods. Because if our day is full of eating in a way that sends us on a blood sugar roller coaster full of energy draining foods, no amount of, like I said, iron, B12, thyroid medication, sleep, like it's not going to do anything for our fatigue if we don't really have that functional nutrition foundation. So if you're ready to stop running on fumes and actually understand how to fuel your body for real lasting energy, especially starting with food, let's dive into it together. So first and foremost, you've probably heard me talk about it before. If you're not a newbie to the lowdown and the lowdown methods around here, we're going to have to think about blood sugar, okay? Blood sugar and energy go hand in hand. If you are not eating in a way that manages blood sugar, you're on a roller coaster that you didn't sign up for, okay? So let's get you off of that roller coaster by really thinking about one of the biggest yet most overlooked reasons why people feel exhausted, and that is blood sugar instability. So if you've ever felt things like, oh, I feel like wired and jittery after coffee, like I don't feel more energized, I just feel like my heart is racing and I feel like I'm sweating, but I don't necessarily feel more energized. Or if you felt completely drained by mid-afternoon and you feel like you crash after lunch and almost like narcoleptic at your desk, or if you feel like you're that person that like, I always need something sweet after a meal, or I want something sweet to like boost my energy when things are getting low, you are probably on the blood sugar roller coaster if you can relate to any of those things, okay? So why does blood sugar matter for energy? Well, number one, our body was designed to keep blood sugar super stable, okay? That is the goal. Our body really doesn't like extremes. It doesn't like extremes in anything, but it definitely doesn't like extreme high blood sugars or extreme low blood sugars. Our body has mechanisms that kick in when we hit those extremes. So extreme high blood sugar, that's where our body's going to secrete insulin. Okay, insulin does what it does. It comes in to the system and it starts to put things into storage form. And insulin is really called our fat storage hormone for a reason. Okay, so it lowers blood sugar by finding a place to store it. If our blood sugar dips too low, that's where our body has another hormone called cortisol, and cortisol enters the scene. Cortisol's job is to then hurry up and find that stored energy and get it out into the bloodstream as fast as humanly possible. So we have these checks and balances for our extreme blood sugar highs and our extreme blood sugar lows, but I promise you that you don't want to have to use this system. Okay, the more that you're calling upon insulin, the more that you're calling upon cortisol to balance your blood sugars for you when you're not managing them through diet, you're going to feel the downstream consequences, okay? It's going to show up as generalized inflammation. It can show up in our mood, our energy, brain fog, body composition, gut health, hormone balance, menstrual cycles, you name it, okay? There's not one system of the body that really escapes from the extremes of blood sugar highs and blood sugar lows. So I tell people all the time, your blood sugar can look fantastic on paper, but if your body is having to secrete a ton of insulin and a ton of cortisol to keep it looking balanced, then it's not actually balanced, okay? So we want to really take that stress off of our body by fueling ourselves in a blood sugar balancing way. So what does that look like? pretty much the opposite of modern eating, let's put it that way, because modern eating really does throw blood sugar balance out the window, especially if you're skipping meals, intermittent fasting, relying on caffeine as a meal or to get through the day. Like, that is going to be opposite of blood sugar balance. So anytime your blood sugar spikes, we get that insulin to bring it back down. But when it drops too fast, you're going to get that crash, cue the exhaustion, cue the brain fog, cue the cravings, and you're just reaching for then another quick fix. You want another hit of caffeine, you want another hit of sugar, and on and on and on we go, okay? So how do we think about stabilizing blood sugar? Number one, I would say, especially if you're dealing with some of this blood sugar regulation, we want to think about how we're starting the day. That's going to be a big window of opportunity because you've been fasting all night, right? And so how you start the day is going to set the tone for your blood sugars for the whole day. Whether you want to admit it or not, if we start the day with what I call a naked carb, which is just like, maybe we just grab some pancakes, or maybe we grab a croissant, or we grab a donut, or we grab a latte, or we grab some banana bread. Like, we start with just a naked carb. It's going to be so difficult. Even if the rest of your day looks relatively blood sugar balanced, it's going to be very difficult for you to get blood sugars back on track. It just sets the tone for the entire day. So if anything you take away from blood sugar conversation, how you start the day is going to matter most. I love teaching my patients to really make sure we're starting the day with some good stabilizing protein and fats. Ideally, even proteins, fats, and some fiber can be very, very impactful to set the tone for stable blood sugars. And then you're not trying to chase blood sugars, chase energy, and chase cravings all day long. So sorry to burst your bubble, I guess I should say, but like, a muffin and a coffee ain't it. It's not going to cut it. And neither is just a coffee. Okay. Not great for blood sugars. We also want to think about, just once we start the day really strong, we want to think about fueling ourselves at consistent intervals throughout the day as well too. So about every 4 hours or so, right? If you feel like you need to eat something every 2 hours, or you're constantly sipping on energy drinks, constantly sipping on coffee, constantly sipping on soda, constantly grazing on something, like, that's going to contribute to some blood sugar dysregulation. Like, we want to eat a meal, feel full and satisfied for the next 4 hours before we eat again. So let's try not to use the excuse of like, I'm too busy to eat lunch. Skipping meals is really just forcing your body to run on straight stress hormones. Okay. So if that's your vibe, go for it, but usually doesn't have great downstream consequences in that regard. And last but not least, we want to make sure that we're always pairing our carbs with some proteins and fats. So not like just grabbing a banana. I'm like, okay, that's just a naked carb. Or like I said, like just grabbing a muffin, right? I don't care if it's a protein muffin, a protein waffle, a protein pancake, like that is not protein. That is still a carb. Okay. So we have to really start thinking about food the way our body thinks about food, and not just get duped by like marketing and ads and all of this stuff. It's like, that's not a protein source. Okay. Our body still sees that as a carb. We have to learn to eat food the way our body understands food. And that, my friends, is exactly what I teach you in my Master Your Metabolism Masterclass. So if you're looking for like, oh, she's talking about proteins, carbs, and fats and veggies, she's talking about blood sugar regulation, like, I don't even know how to fuel myself that way. Go to my website and purchase my Master Your Metabolism Masterclass. It is a 6-week course that will literally walk you through everything that I'm talking about and give you tons of downloads and recipes and meal planning tools so that you can learn how to eat in a blood sugar balanced way. I am telling you right now, so many people come to me and they're like, oh, I think it's my hormones. I think it's this and that. And they just start balancing their blood sugar, and like all of their problems domino effect. Right? It's like, oh, blood sugar is huge. Okay. So when your blood sugar is stable, your energy becomes more predictable, no more highs, no more lows, just nice, steady, reliable energy. And then that allows us to kind of like crowd out some of the excess sugar or some of the excess caffeine. So it's like, if you feel like, man, I'm really relying on caffeine and sugar right now just to kind of get my energy fix, that's probably because your blood sugars are not stabilized. So don't try to just like cold turkey cut out the caffeine or the sugar. It's probably not going to work very well until you balance your blood sugars first. And then all of a sudden the sugar and the caffeine just like magically disappear, right? It works out beautifully. So when we think about like when we're eating and how we're eating and pairing foods together from a blood sugar standpoint, then we can really talk about like what we're eating and the difference between foods that really are energy givers versus foods that are energy drainers. So let's take this next segment to really talk about how food either creates energy or steals energy from us. Something that I think will kind of completely shift how you think about food is that food is not just calories or macros, okay? It's something that more of our diet culture influence tries to wrap our human brain around, like eat less, move more. It's not about calories and macros. Food is literally biology. Okay. Not that you have to go back to biology classes to understand it, but we have to understand that like our body sees food a very specific way, and whether we want food to be a certain thing or not, it's how does our body perceive that food? So kind of going back to my previous example, would I love a protein pancake? Would I love my body to see that as protein? I wish it had the glycemic response of protein, but it doesn't, right? I can eat protein pancakes and my body is going to eat that, digest that, and absorb that as a carbohydrate. So then I'm going to get the hormonal carbohydrate response. So I have people all the time that come to me and they're tracking their food and they're tracking their macros and like, I don't get it. I'm hitting X amount of protein a day, or I'm staying under my calorie goals and I just keep gaining weight. And I'm like, yeah, that's because we're not thinking about food the way our body thinks about food. Okay. We've got to be willing to do something new, do something different. So introducing a new system where we think about food as fuel and literally biological information for the body. And the quality of that information is really going to determine how much energy our body can actually create from said food. So we have energy giving foods and we have energy draining foods. Sometimes in some circles, you'll even hear about these foods being called for good reason. We have foods that are alive and we have foods that are dead. Okay. And it sounds a little bit morbid, but as I talk through these, you'll kind of start to understand how it makes sense. And the foods that are alive are ones that really are energy givers, and the foods that are more dead from a biological standpoint tend to not be as supportive for energy levels. So energy giving foods, real energy starts at the level of the cells. So we're talking about mitochondria here, people, right? The powerhouses of the cells. And mitochondria, they don't just think calories, right? They need nutrients, they need minerals, and they need real biological signals from food. So energy giving foods have absorbed energy from other places, right? So we think about energy just gets transferred from person to person, object to object. Energy is not created or destroyed. It's just transferred. It's transferred in different forms. So energy can start from the sun, and energy can start from soil, and then energy can become an apple, and then we eat the apple, and that we absorb the light energy and the soil energy from that apple, right? Does that make sense? So sunlight powered foods, like plants that capture photons of light from the sun, they go through photosynthesis, right? And they're storing that energy in their own cells. So things like fruits, vegetables, herbs, even like meats are literally consuming solar energy. Okay, it's awesome, right? A cow stands out and grazes in the pasture. Not only are they standing and being exposed to the sun, they're also eating grass, which grows from the sun and the soil, right? So we're literally just transitioning energy from person to person, food to food, form to form, which is really cool. So sunlight powered foods like our plants, mineral rich foods. Minerals are awesome, not just vitamins, but like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, chromium, like all these trace minerals, those charge our cells like a freaking battery. Okay. And so foods that are either grown in mineral rich soil, especially like you think about like foods that are grown underground, like a potato or a turnip or a carrot, right? The root vegetables, or even things like wild caught like seafood that was in the ocean with salt water, right? It's like these are the exact cofactors that our mitochondria need to produce ATP, which is our body's energy currency, okay? So sodium, potassium, magnesium, like we get these through hydration as well too, which is why I'm big on like electrolyte supplementation, because we really need those, not only getting them from food, but we can also get them from hydration status as well too. Know that your adrenals, which are those glands that sit right on top of your kidneys, these adrenals rely on minerals. So the more stressed we are, the more dehydrated we are, you are just like draining minerals like crazy. And so that can contribute a lot to energy imbalances as well too. So minerals are going to help our mitochondria make energy. All right. So without them, you literally cannot make energy effectively or efficiently. So when we think about energy giving foods, I think about foods that have grown because of the power of the sun, or foods that have been nourished by the growth of like the ground and the ocean water, right? So we think about like veggies and plants and fruits, grass-fed meats, like animals that eat bugs and grass, or even like wild caught fish that was in like a salty ocean, right? Root vegetables that were pulled up from the ground. These all contain the raw materials for mitochondrial energy production, which is awesome. Okay. So when your diet's full of these energy giving foods, your mitochondria really thrive. And if your diet is mostly like energy draining foods, which we'll talk about next, that's where those energy crashes really start to make themselves apparent. So as you can imagine, all of those foods that have been grown because of the sun and the soil, they are foods that we call, they're alive, right? They're alive versus maybe more of like an energy draining food probably leaves us a little exhausted because biologically speaking, it's kind of a dead food. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just like, let's just talk real talk. Like those foods are probably going to steal your energy instead of giving you energy because of what they don't contain. So they probably don't contain a lot of minerals. They probably don't contain a lot of cellular energy from the sun or the soil. They're going to be more of like what someone might call like your highly processed foods because they're stripped of nutrients. Like they weren't made from soil and sun. They were made in a factory on a conveyor belt underneath like artificial LED lights, right? It's like they're so refined that they're void of vitamins and minerals and natural enzymes, and your body actually has to pull from its own stores to even break them down. So if a food is void in vitamins and minerals and enzymes, it's like, okay, then our body has to dip into our own stores in order to even just digest it and break it down. Or even, like I said, some more of those like highly refined and processed grains and carbohydrates as well too. Those are such fast digesting foods that like they send our blood sugar sailing and then they crash us, like your white breads and your pastries and your sodas. It's like they give us that quick burst of energy, but then such a sharp drop that they leave us exhausted and then we want more sugar. Such a vicious roller coaster as well too. So we have to think about all of these foods that are more dead foods. They really disrupt our entire mitochondrial process and they drain what we already have in our body as well too. So low calorie diets, like I said, not getting enough nutrients, or when we do eat, like think about the classic American woman that maybe has been cultured by more of your like eat less, move more. And you think about kind of like the diets of the 90s and early 2000s, or even our whole Ozempic craze right now. It's like, this is great. I'm just not hungry and I just don't eat. And it's like, okay, but then when you do eat, it's like I'm munching on like a protein bar, or maybe I'm grabbing like an energy drink, or I'm grabbing some like protein Pop-Tart, or I'm like, oh man, I'm like, not only are we not eating a lot, but then when we are eating, we're eating dead foods. And so our poor body is just dumping the energy reserves that we do have, like vitamins and minerals and enzymes, because it's like, oh my gosh, I need to give to this dead food that just came in order to even digest and absorb it. And then we also think about obviously like caffeine and stimulants, like they're what we call borrowed energy. It's like it gives us energy for a second, but then we're really just borrowing that energy from tomorrow to give to today. And then tomorrow we end up more fatigued. And then we need the caffeine to kind of fill the gap. So it's like, stop the madness. So we really have to think about those things that are energy drainers are going to be more of your foods that are more factory made foods versus like foods that were actually made from growth in the sun and growth in the soil. More factory made foods, packaged foods with bags and barcodes on them, or like your stimulants like caffeine. Those can be very, very draining because our body has to like somehow try to add nutrients or add some life to the food that's coming in relatively dead, right? So energy, just taking this away and kind of wrapping this up, like energy is not just about food. It's about like the energy giving foods, eating in a blood sugar balancing way. And when you start feeding your body that way, you finally stop running on fumes and like chasing that perpetual energy cycle of like exhaustion and burnout and crashing, and then trying to find some of those quick fix band-aids. So to really start experiencing like true sustainable energy, we need to think about blood sugar regulation, like my Master Your Metabolism Masterclass. And we also need to then need to think about like really soaking in those energy giving foods as well too. So if you're feeling constantly exhausted, if you feel like your body is broken, it is probably not broken. It's probably underfed and underfueled from energy giving foods. So really kind of going back to the drawing board with this can start to turn around some real energy production. We're going to be diving even deeper into the body, how sometimes doesn't feel fully equipped to make energy because of some of those root cause dysfunctions. So if this episode helped you, make sure you send it to a friend. And also, like I said, make sure you stick around because we're going to have even more in our energy balance series as we start to dig into some of the functional medicine root cause reasons behind the fatigue that even some of the conventional medicine isn't tackling. So in the meantime, though, between now and next week, head to the link in my bio, which will take you to my website. And from my website, you can get involved in my Master Your Metabolism Masterclass and start learning how to eating in a blood sugar balancing way, as that will be the first foundational piece of the puzzle. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Come back next Monday for more Learn with Lo.